It's bigger than black and white. It's a problem with the whole way of life. It can't change overnight. But we gotta start somewhere. Might as well go ahead, start here. We done had a hell of a year. I'ma make it count while I'm here. God is the only man I fear.
Hello, I'm Van Jones. I am an author. I'm an attorney. I'm the founder of a bunch of not-for-profit organizations. I'm also a TV host. But the most important thing I can tell you about myself right now, I am a black man in America in 2020. And that's a lot. And I'm raising two black boys in the United States of America. And I think we're at a moment where we can actually have a conversation about what that actually means. You know, black culture is celebrated. Black culture is beloved. The black experience that gives rise to that culture, I think is often disrespected, is dismissed, is minimized, or it's just not well understood. But I think we are now at a moment where there's a shift. We're going to have an extraordinary experience together today. We're going to do this town hall. It's called We the People. And what we want you to understand is we aren't just talking to talk. We want to talk so you can take action. And this is going to be an interactive experience. We're going to give you tools, information that you can use in the real world. We want you to screenshot stuff. We want you to invite people into this conversation. Because that's really, I think, what's needed. We need a bigger conversation, and we're going to use technology to do it. You know, for me, Black lives have always mattered. That's not new. Black lives have mattered from the beginning of time. What's new is the willingness of people to talk about it. And we have an opportunity to amplify the discussion and to move things forward, especially today. This town hall we're doing, We the People, is going to have some of the biggest voices for change in the country, all in the palm of your hand, including Killer Mike, who is just a legend in my mind. Jamel Hill is going to be here. We're also going to hear from Elaine Welteroth. Now, she's an author, but she's already made history. And she's made history because in the history of Condé Nast, with all the magazines they own and control, only two people have ever been named editor-in-chief, and she is one of them. So please welcome to this conversation, Elaine Welteroth. Look, I am so happy that I get a chance to have this conversation with Elaine. I mean, this sister is just bad. She's bad. She's a New York Times bestselling author, award-winning journalist. She's been a judge on the new Project Runway. I mean, she messed with Michelle Obama. She's just bad. So I want to talk to you about this moment. It's just been such a mix of inspiring protests and killings and stuff like that. Talk to us about your range of emotion over this past period of what I call this great awakening around justice.
It's been really heavy. It's been really emotional. You know, this is not new for Black people in America, right? We have been grieving for a long time around these same kinds of senseless murders. I wrote about, Philando Castile's murder, which really represented in my book. And I wrote about it from the perspective of being one of very few Black people in the office at the time, when I was so devastated. So it was so hard to get out of bed that morning, let alone proceed as business as usual. And I wrote about what it was like coming into the office that day, expecting or anticipating that other people might be feeling some of what I was feeling, just as humans, as, feeling, thinking humans, and feeling like everyone was able to move on like business as usual. It feels so relevant once again now, thinking, 4 years later, here we are again. But the difference is that the response from the rest of the community, folks who are non-Black, are finally seeing this moment as a wake-up call to get off the sidelines and to get involved and invested in this fight for justice. So I can say that since being in the streets and attending a number of protests, there is something different in the air this time. There are a lot of emotions I think we're all moving through, or trying to move through to get towards the collective action that we all need to take. There is so much work for all of us. So I think we're all feeling that pressure. We're feeling that weight. But I think we're also feeling empowered that this time has to be different. It has to be different.
You've been on this. I mean, you really have been not just an inspiration, but you've been offering really education to a whole new generation through Teen Vogue. And you were doing it when it was, now it's trendy, now it's popular, but you were doing it when it wasn't trendy, when it was kind of shocking to see Teen Vogue taking on these issues. Why did you make that choice? Because you're saying other people now are going to have to make similar choices to be a little bit more brave and bold, but you were doing it when it wasn't cool. Why? And talk about that.
By speaking just about fashion, we were ignoring the range of interests that were central to them, the issues that mattered to them in the world. And so we made sure that we were creating more of an intersectional feminist focus, and that included fashion and pop culture, but that also spoke to, you know, intersectional feminism and social justice issues. Black Lives Matter. You're right that there was no model for success for that at the time. There were a lot of people that were like, "Oh, Teen Vogue, talk about politics and justice issues," like, and we got pushback. You know, folks thought it wasn't our place to go, but the reality is that young people have been at the forefront of social justice issues for generations. It was certainly, I won't say scary, but there was an uncertainty about how it would pan out, but we knew that we had to do the right thing. And we felt like we had to be a part of the right side of history. And I'm very proud to say that we have been, and I'm so proud of the team there that's leading that charge today. But you're right in that I think a lot of companies are now confronting that same reckoning of what do we mean now? How do we mean more to our community? How do we right size to make sure that we're meeting this moment and that we are on the right side of history and that we are better serving our community and our audience, our consumers?
Well, let's talk about that though, because you can actually give some advice to people who are working at these brands, whether they're at the top or whether they're the intern. You know, these brands are going to now have to do some of what you've already done. I mean, when you're a pioneer, that means you've been there, done that. What do these brands need to do to get relevant and to catch up to this moment?
So there's 3 steps I would say that any individual brand or corporation can follow. First of all, you have to take inventory of where you are. You can't be a part of a solution if you don't recognize how you are part of the problem.
Oh, you better preach. Can you say that one more time? Just preach.
Okay. I think like nobody wants to say they're racist. Nobody wants to I raise their hand and say, I haven't done my part here, or I recognize that I could do better. And so it's, I think, important to just acknowledge what you play, what part have you been playing in this, and take inventory. What does the complexion of your newsroom look like? Who's in your boardroom? Who has those board seats? And let's look at every level of management, all the way down to the intern level. Take an honest assessment of where we are. And I don't mean just looking at your campaigns. And so we have to push ourselves to go further. And so that's part of step 1 is taking inventory. Step 2, take ownership, acknowledging where you need to change, where you need to do better. And then the 3rd step is take action, do better, commit to being a part of solutions that are going to move us from where we are to a better, more equitable future.
So for example, Sephora said they're going to give 15% of their shelf space to Black-owned brands. Now, I think, to me, that's a lot. I mean, does that strike you as too much, too little? I mean, what is that when you talk about taking action? Is that the kind of action, or what kind of action might really meet the moment?
Is there something I can do with my contacts, with my experience, with my skill set? What can I uniquely do? I hope everyone's asking themselves that question. And one of my very close friends, Aurora James, and I were having a conversation when all the protests were kicking off about what we want to see from companies, because we were starting to see all the we stand with the Black community and Black Lives Matter was starting to come from companies that we're just like, how in the world is this by this corporation when they have 0 Black people in their executive leadership team? Something's not adding up. And so what we sat there and we thought about, what is our ask to brands? So Aurora James, who is my dear friend, and she is a Black business owner. She's a successful accessories designer. She and I spoke, and she decided that she was going to say, I want to start something. And this is the kind of the origin story for what became the 15% pledge. And now the 15% pledge, which Aurora James founded, and I'm working with her on, it's saying to corporations, specifically big box retailers, you need to go beyond making a statement to stand in solidarity with the Black community. You need to go beyond even a one-time donation. What we are asking for is 15% of your shelf space to be dedicated to supporting Black businesses, Black-owned businesses. That is a big ask. And the reason we decided 15% is because 15% of the population, nearly 15% of the population is Black. So let's see ourselves represented equally on your shelves. And it has been 3 weeks, and this thing has already exploded. It has gotten so much momentum, which is so exciting to see. Listen, I hope that we can empower Black business owners, because they are the most impacted during the coronavirus. And for anybody who's watching and wants to get involved with the 15% pledge, I really encourage you to go to the website 15percentpledge.org and sign the petition. So help us keep the pressure on these companies to continue to fuel money, to put money back into the Black community. And if all 4 of these retailers that we're targeting take this pledge, this will mean over $14 billion being funneled back into the Black community. So it is a really big mission, and we're really excited about the impact that we can make if we all come together and push brands to do the right thing right now.
Well, listen, I also want to thank you for what you're doing. I want to thank you for what you've been an educator, you've been an inspirer. Now you're somebody who's actually pioneering a pathway forward. You got a commitment from these corporations because you have a commitment in yourself to change. And I hope other people take inspiration from you. Thank you so much for being here. We're behind you 100%. 100%. Thank you
so much, Van. I appreciate you. And you too. I'm such a fan of the work that you do. You're such an important voice, and I'm a fan. I keep doing what you're doing too. This is an honor to be interviewed by you, so thank you.
Hip hop is a universal sound, but it does a lot more than just entertain. Hip hop educates, hip hop motivates. It's the voice of a generation, and every generation finds a voice in hip hop. And this new generation is no different. Atlanta artist Lil Baby has really stepped up to the plate. He's got a new song he penned in the middle of all this. It's called The Bigger Picture, and he put some visuals to it. Check out the video.
They training officers, the killers, then shooting protesters with these rubber bullets. They regular people, I know that they feel us. These scars too deep, they heal us. What happened to COVID? Nobody remember, it ain't making sense. I'm just here to vent. It happened to one of your people, it's different. We get it, the system is wicked, just learn how to pick it. Knowledge is power, I swear I'm a witness. I know that I'm gifted, I won't go too deep, cause I'm scared they'll get me, ain't scared to admit it. Somebody I can't mention, it's people who can. Well, here's the chance, I won't take the stand, but I'll take a stand for what I believe. Must not be breathing the air that I breathe. You know that the way that I bleed, you can bleed. I never been a fan of police, but my neighborhood know I try to keep peace, so it's only right that I get in the streets. March for a reason, I just on GP. How people die for us to be free. Get up to you mean, this was a dream. Now we got the power that we need to have. They don't want us with it, and that's why they mad. It's bigger than black and white. It's a problem with the whole way of life. It can't change overnight, but we gotta start somewhere. Might as well go ahead, start here. We done had a hell of a year. I'ma make it count while I'm here. God is the only man I fear. It's bigger than black and white. It's a problem with the whole way of life. It can't change overnight, but we gotta start somewhere. Might as well go ahead, start here. We done had a hell of a year. I'ma make it count while I'm here. God is the only man I fear.
Atlanta has been the epicenter and the hotbed really of a lot of change over the years, and especially nowadays. It's interesting to see how Lil Baby taps into the Atlanta right now and brings it to the screen. I mean, that is 2020. That is what it looks like right now in that town. And I think he did a beautiful job of capturing it. I think the lyrics of this thing are just off the charts. He's in Jay-Z territory at this point, Bob Dylan territory at this point. It's bigger than black and white. It's a problem with the whole way of life. It can't change overnight. That's a whole political theory. that's college. I mean, it's to understand it's not just a racial issue. It's a whole bunch of other issues going on. It takes time to change things. There's a level of wisdom there, you know, and I think it just comes out. This generation has seen so much already. They've gone through so much already. They know it's not a simple thing. It's going to take a long time, but that's different than fight the power. You know, my generation, our anthems were all like, we're going to turn it over today. We're going to make change tomorrow. I think this is a new twist on hip hop politics coming through in the song. You can't have a political movement without political music. It's just never happened. You go back to the labor movement, civil rights movement, women's rights movement, you always have musicians and artists step up because a revolution is a change of heart first before anything else changes in law and politics and government, in the economy. The first change has to be in the human heart. And that's what art does. Art moves you, music moves you. And I'm just so proud that Lil Baby is using his platform to move this whole country forward and to move this cause forward. All right, my girl Jamel Hill is gonna take over for me. She gets the honor, I'm kind of jealous, but she gets the honor of talking to and interviewing the great Killer Mike. He is an author, he's an actor, he's an activist, he's a musician, he's a living legend. Listen to Killer Mike.
I hope everybody out there has just been taking copious notes, gaining a lot of knowledge, taking some screenshots, because there's just been a lot of really good nuggets that have been shared. Hope you're inviting all your friends in and really having the kind of conversation in this country I certainly have not seen in my lifetime. And I'm curious to hear the thoughts of my guest right now, Killer Mike. You know, Mike, we've been at this moment many times in our country where tragedy has struck. About this issue in particular, we've seen these videos before, but right now it feels like the world is just changing right before our very eyes. I can kind of imagine how some of our, you know, our elders felt during the civil rights movement to see the world just changing right before our eyes. So you're there in Atlanta, where certainly there was a recent incident with Rashard Brooks. We've been absorbing everything that's been happening in the country up until this moment. So how are you kind of handling all of this emotionally right now?
Man, as an American, it's hard because it's just it's a growing pain of sorts. You know what I mean? We know that our country is progressing. We know that on the other side of that progression, that we all are going to be better. I think our community and people who are essentially descendants of the cornerstone of this nation. And the cornerstone of this nation is the Constitution is important, the Founding Fathers was important, but free labor allowed all that to stand. And as the descendant of a slave, and then when I say descendant, I don't mean anything long. My great-grandmother taught me how to sew a button on a shirt as she was sewing blankets that we still use in my house. Her mother was born enslaved. So that's how close slavery is. I know how to sew a button because a slave taught her child to, and that child taught me to. That's how close. So I think that I'm excited that progress is happening, but I know on the other side of that progression, Breonna, Mr. Floyd, brother that was killed here, there are martyrs, and we've long been martyrs for the progression of this country. And I hope that as we enter into another martyrdom, another Black person has died at the hands of the state. I hope that we enter this coming out determined to see justice on the front end and not only when we're angry. I hope that coming out of this, the young people that are in the streets organizing, continue to organize in the time of peace like they are in time of war, because they're organizing effectively. They're causing systemic change in the immediate and not some protracted campaign. And I support that. And plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize. And as long as you keep doing that, you're going to capitalize off the gains that you're making. And I appreciate, and I don't mean capitalize in a monetary way. I mean, these kids are capitalizing, progressing. Organizers on the ground level who've been working for years to campaign around police brutality and violence have in an instant been able to organize people to progress law.
Yeah, it's been a lot of impressive moments. I mean, you mentioned about how the young people, they're so organized, because I think about the progression from, say, Ferguson to now, and it's been pretty outstanding when you think about it. What has impressed you the most about what you're seeing right now?
What has impressed me? that in '92, we rioted in Atlanta. There were riots in other cities. There were riots in Los Angeles. But there was such a stronghold on information. Local news wouldn't let what other cities know until after it was over. What's impressed me is the ability to use technology. We haven't gotten as efficient as Hong Kong, but it's coming. You are seeing at a day and age where in an instant, people are able to mob on a place. People are able to say what needs to be said and go and get ghosts. You're seeing in an instant what our grandparents were able to do. Like we have a house party app in which people can sit down on that house party app. You can organize with those 8 people to know what are we going to do in school, what are we going to do in local school boards, what are we going to do with city council. Our grandparents used to have to do that in the basement. Now you're able to do it over your phones and organize effectively and immediately. So I'm impressed by the level of organization I've seen. Because when I was an organizer at 15, 16 years old, we'd have to literally meet for 30 days to plan something that you might strike that might be 3 hours or even 30 minutes, but you're constantly there. These kids are able to do it, and these young people and these organizers are able to do it in a blink of an eye. But that only happens when you train like Floyd Mayweather. Organizers are like Mayweather. They never not training, you know? And I think that these are the people, again, that we should be looking to follow in these times.
But you dropped a mention of the House Party app. Mike, are you on House Party? You use it?
I just found out about it. I got the cool people in my life helped me to what's new. The 2 apps I'm most interested in right now are House Party, and there's an app called Convos that allows me to speak directly back and forth with people. That's a lot cooler than sometimes Twitter where stuff gets lost in translation. But, you know, I'm still over there tweeting with the angry moms and dads. Shouts out to the old folks.
I think about where activism was on this issue in particular when Ferguson happened, and looking at it now, and while, you know, there was definitely a lot of positives that came out of Ferguson, particularly the Black Lives Matter movement, seeing the level and the difference is that, you know, clearly there was a lot of lessons learned there, and they've applied them now. And so it definitely seems much more cohesive, and that's been impressive. What has impressed you about what you're seeing, especially from these young people who really have seemed to seize this moment?
What I've seen be most beautiful about this time is kids have the ability to adjust and move and be like water. They're truly plotting, planning, strategizing, organizing, and mobilizing. The skateboard kids came in. Usually you would see in the 60s, Black people who look like me. We'd make public protests. We'd get our heads split open. Sympathetic whites and allies and people who truly believe in freedom, justice, and equality entered the stage. Now, not only are you beating Black people, you're dragging off white people. And it became a tapestry, a unified front to give us our most basic civil rights and acknowledge our human rights. That tapestry is happening again, and it's happening in a bigger and better way. I was talking about those skateboard kids. I saw those kids first come in as defenders. When police were hacking with people with batons, they held up the skateboards to protect them. Most kids who skateboard, my kids skateboarders, most skateboard kids in the South don't look like me, right? But I saw the skateboard community literally come in and save protesters from beatings. And then they got really frisky and they started attacking back. And I was like, this is, although I don't want violence in the streets because those kids deserve to grow to be adults without being soldiers against the state that their parents pay taxes to. It impressed me that the proletariat showed government that you work for us. And in this moment, we are exercising our right to make public display of the evil that has happened. It makes me proud that I live in a country that has long promised equality, rarely given it to people who look like me, people who don't look like me defending.
You made an interesting note and observation about the skateboard crew. And I think anybody who's watching has noticed that it's not just Black people who are out here protesting.
No, it's not. It's a tapestry of people.
It's a tapestry of people.
The Amish. The Amish.
Yeah. Wasn't that crazy?
I didn't even know the Amish saw the news.
I was thinking, who told them? Right? I was like, I didn't right?
I was so impressed though. I was so thankful. My heart was filled with joy.
Yeah, so you're seeing all these different types of people that you never thought this issue would resonate with them. It kind of reminds me of your music. Your music is unapologetically pro-Black, unapologetically, right?
Absolutely.
But yet, when you look at a Killer Mike fan, it's across multicultural section of people.
Yes.
Why do you think your music is able to resonate that way, despite the fact that you are also clearly talking to your people?
Yeah, I'm proud to be me. I like me. I like black people. I'm not making no excuses. I'm not making no apologies coming in the door. I love us. I am in love with us. And because I love me, it has nothing to do or affecting my love of others. I have a very good friendship with East Indian cousins, Raj and Neil. They own the store right next to Walters on what's happening. So if you're from Atlanta, you know about Walters. If you're a big guy from Atlanta, you know about, the store right next door. These guys have always just been good to me. Raj went to India. He came back, brought my wife incense, these beautiful little elephant characters. He's proud to be Indian. I've learned about being Indian from my Indian friends. When you're truly who you are, how could you be offended? How could you not love it or like it? Like, man, I'm a part of the original people on earth. I'm from the continent that birthed all humanity. I think when you wear that proudly and unapologetically, and not from a place of needing someone to be below you, there's no reason for a people not to like me. I like you. I got plenty of heroes that don't look like me. There's a portrait of John Brown on my wall in my basement. I thought he's a hero. He doesn't have to look like me. You know what I mean? But I refuse to act like people who look like me aren't great. I didn't say good. I didn't say good enough. I didn't say equal. I said great. I'm from a great and mighty people. And if you can't accept that, then maybe I'm not for you. But I believe that because I am simply who I am, I believe that that gets accepted. Because you know what? I remember being on a tour bus, and I'm on there with a bunch of Northeasterners because of course, my rap partner's a white guy from Brooklyn. And we're on there and watching Swamp People, and everybody's laughing. And I come up and stagger into the front, and I look at it, and I start smiling, and I look at the room and say, I got more in common with them than any of y'all. And I just walk to the back. Now, because it's the truth. I'm a Southern boy. My grandparents from Alabama and rural Georgia. I grew up more like people on those shows. So I think across cultural lines and across racial lines, people identify with me, but just because I'm your typical American guy. You know what I mean? And I have some special things. I'm not going to deny that I'm special. I was a smart kid, went to Morehouse, had an understanding of some cool stuff. I married a beautiful woman. That helps, But I think that ultimately what resonates with people is that I'm a regular guy. One of my best friends in the world is a white guy from Brooklyn. So I think that people understand that I have the ability not to look past your race or ethnicity, not to look past who you are culturally, but to look at it and love it and learn from it without wanting to co-opt it or be it.
What you're talking about in a very succinct and robust way is really allyship. And that's been a word that, you have it sounds like you have a lot of really great allies that are in your life. Now in this moment, I've gotten the question constantly, I assume you have too, about how to be an ally. What do I have to do? Right? I've had so many conversations with white people, like really good friends of mine in the last 2 weeks. So all right, guys, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but
hold on.
Hold on a second. But nevertheless, that being said, is that, what would you say to somebody who wants to not only be an ally, but be a good ally?
If you want to be a good ally in this moment, white corporation, white person with the means, that's a worthy allyship. On a ground level, if you're just working hard every week, you don't know what to do, you're an electrician, you're a plumber, grab one young man who doesn't look like you, a young woman, and teach them that trade. That's allyship. Allyship isn't just throwing the money, but if you got the big money, put it towards somewhere. But on a very real and basic level, my son had an accident with a man named Keith. I bought my son a car. My son Malik, with a very pretty girl in the front seat, rear-ended this guy Keith. Calls me. I pull up to Keith and the police officer. I say, if he'll allow me to handle this privately, I just don't want to call my insurance company because, I had just got in an accident. I drive fast. My son, Keith, in good faith, gave me the opportunity to do that. And me and this man became friends. I'm literally friends with this white man who told me about Atlanta pre-white flight and desegregation, who's taught me about fatherhood and the importance of presence in your child's life. That doesn't happen if we're not open for it to happen. So an allyship with white people doesn't have to be an organization of saving the world. But you do have to do what me and Keith did. You do have to, on blind faith, trust someone who doesn't look like you and allow that person to educate you. So an allyship is not just calling your black friend saying what I do. It's going to black organizations that might be local and saying, what am I do? It's calling your friend and saying, what's the next thing you're doing? And I want to be an extra set of hands. Doesn't mean you get to go to the black people meeting, but it does mean if they say, I'm going to feed people on Skid Row, you show up. And you show up with empathy and care, and you do it. And I'm going to tell you, we need doctors in that space. We need lawyers in that space. We need legislators in that space. You know, we need the people who are really empowered to be in that space, because there's some things that need to happen on ground level that once the grassroots people have gotten it here, there needs to be money put behind these things. A lot of the problems that we have now that are erupting could have been solved in 96, 2006, 2016, and all these other years, but we chose not to because we trusted the right thing's going to happen. Right thing's not going to happen unless we make it. And after that, you have the potential to truly be brothers and sisters. You have the potential to be past the letting cultural, national, religious markers evict the fact that I know that I'm talking and I'm with a human being, and at our very core, past any physical difference, my job is to honor the soul of that other human being. So there's no need to have allies because I'm not at war. I truly have a brother and sister. There's no need to have an ally because there's no threat of war. I refuse to send any 18-year-old boy or girl off to die. And that has to be something that's much, much deeper than policy, much, much deeper than the human condition in the last 500 years. We have to get back to that. So that's my humble opinion. I don't know, where that takes white America, but I hope we stay standing up, fighting together.
Mike, we've been having this great conversation, and a lot of people watching, they probably want to know, because again, these things happen in flashes where 1 minute we're talking about this, everybody's fired up, everybody's willing to do things, and then the next minute, the momentum dies. So how can the people who are watching now, how can they keep this conversation, this action, this momentum going?
Take this conversation, get 8 to 10 people around you, your neighbors and people who live within 10 square miles, and start to see what you can do to affect. And then connect with other people that may be in closer proximity, 30, 40, 50 miles, even another city or places that are doing it right, in other places. Connect with those people. And just if all of us do a little bit, no one has to do a lot. If all of us do a little, if all of us pick a little to do, no one will have to do a lot.
That's a word right there. If we all do a little bit, nobody has to do a lot.
Has to do a lot, absolutely.
Nobody has to do a lot. Mike, I have enjoyed this conversation like I enjoy every conversation with you. I can certainly talk to you. Yes, it is mutual. The mutual respect and love of society right here. Thank you. And more importantly, thank you for everything you do on the ground. I mean, so many people, I knew that you tell the truth the way it needs to be told, but a lot of people during this time of crisis have been exposed to you and understand that, you really are for the people. This is called We the People. This is you all day long. So thank you for all the work and all the inspiration, all the words, everything that you're adding to this conversation, and more importantly, to this action. With that said, we have to say goodbye, but we don't have to get out of here just yet, because I'm gonna toss this on to my brother, Van Jones, who can take it from here.
Jamel and I, we spent the past hour, we've been talking to Killer Mike, we've been talking to Elaine Welteroth. We also got a chance to see that amazing video from Lil Baby. Jamel, what did you get from your conversation with Killer Mike? And more importantly to me, what do you make of this moment that we're in?
The one thing you can always expect from Killer Mike is blunt honesty. I think that's why a lot of people look at him as a really credible voice right now. He's honest about what he knows and honest about what he doesn't know. So I think when you have those elements, that's going to always make for a pretty good conversation. I'm with you. This moment at the same time is welcome. It's also a little bit surreal in terms of what took us so long to get here, to make sure that we're not always starting from ground zero every time we have to have a significant conversation about race in this country.
Why do you think it's different this time? Because there have been videos before, and yet people still now act like they're shocked. Help me understand what's different this time from your point of view. What's your theory?
It's two things that I think stood out about the George Floyd video. One, there was no yeah, but. And granted, in my mind, we've seen videos where there was no yeah, but people nevertheless invented a yeah, but. But in this one, there really wasn't one. Even if you were Stretch Armstrong trying to stretch and find one, there just wasn't one. What always has just stuck with me is the look on this officer's face as he was kneeling on George Floyd's neck. It was so cold. It was as if this were Thursday. And he showed such little emotion, remorse, any emotion you want to name. He didn't show any of that as he killed a man in the middle of the street with bystanders looking on. So I think that situation, coupled with the fact we had already been reeling from Ahmaud Arbery, we had already been reeling from Breonna Taylor. And even though the situation wasn't fatal, there was definitely a storm of frustration at what happened with Christian Cooper. So this all together leads us to this moment where finally, even the most adamant naysayers who wanted to pretend as if this wasn't a structural problem, what could they say? I mean, there was nothing else that could be said. And I think everybody who was already fed up decided now is the moment, now is the time. The world has slowed down because of COVID-19. If we are going to address this, this needs to happen now.
I've never seen 20, 30 million white people asking Black people for leadership. That's interesting because they say, well, what do you want me to do? I'm like, well, I don't know. Google is a powerful tool. I don't know. I'm realizing now, though, that this is an honest question. How do you think that we as African Americans and our allies can rise to meet a moment like this and actually accept the fact that we may actually have a couple million new allies? And how do we deal with that? That's new for us.
I'm glad you used the word leadership because there's a difference between us being put in a leadership position and us being put in an educational position. The educational part, we are long past, right? Like we don't want to be educating anybody else about race. We're not here to soothe you. We're not here to make you feel better. But leadership is something different. And it looks different depending on how you want us to take that leadership. Certainly, we are accustomed to being a voice on these issues. We're accustomed to setting the agenda. It's fine if we continue to lead in that direction. I think what we're looking for is, if this were, a relay race, we want to pass the baton and we want you to be able to say, okay, here's what we've been feeling about this issue. Here's what needs to happen to change it. The other part of this race is that you got to be willing to run it just as hard and as fast as we are. Because if you're not, that's why we remain stuck in the flying pattern that we've been in for hundreds of years and decades as we've tried to reconcile this issue. So we have to figure out what is the most useful way of allyship. We see a lot of people throwing statements around. We see a lot of people throwing money around. We need that to be a focused effort, and more importantly, to be vocal about it. I can't take any more double-sidedness. There can be no more other-siderism, if I may make up a word, meaning that you give over here and you're a company that is like, yeah, Black Lives Matter, except for in my boardroom, where they don't, or except for my organizational chart,